There are two types of herpes simplex virus, herpes simplex virus 1 and herpes simplex virus 2. So they're DNA viruses and they belong to the Herpes viridae family. It was commonly believed HSV-1 causes oral lesion while HSV-2 causes genital lesion. But actually, HSV-1 and 2 are both capable of causing oral and genital lesions. In this video, we'll be discussing about what happens in oral herpes infection. History of herpes simplex infection includes primary infection, after which the virus will be in latency, which means it will remain inactive for some time, and then recurrent infection can occur. Primary infection is the initial exposure of a person to the virus. This occurs in the case of herpes by direct contact with the lesion or body fluids like saliva from an already infected individual. Primary infection generally occurs in children, teenagers, and young adults. After the primary infection occurs in an individual, the virus travels along the axons of sensory nerves and remains latent in the sensory ganglion like trigeminal ganglion in case of oral herpes. You can see the trigeminal ganglion right here. Sometimes extraneural latency can occur in the epithelium as well. So in this case, the virus won't be traveling till the trigeminal ganglion but will be lying dormant in the epithelium itself. It can reactivate from these latent sites due to some form of trigger. The usual triggering factors are stress, UV radiation, fever, trauma, and menstruation. The virus then travels through the axons to skin or mucosa to cause recurrent, recrudescent, or secondary herpes simplex infection. So all these names correspond to the reactivated herpes infection. Sometimes reactivation of the herpes simplex virus may lead to asymptomatic shedding of the virus in the saliva and other secretions. What this means is there won't be any clinical findings, so the person will not be aware of the reactivation. That's why asymptomatic shedding is a major risk factor for transmission. Now that we have learned how primary and secondary herpes simplex infection occurs, we'll now discuss the features. Primary infection can often be asymptomatic. But in symptomatic cases, the incubation period, which means the period between exposure to the infection and appearance of the first symptoms, is usually 3 to 9 days. Most affected individuals are young, between 6 months and 5 years. There will be prodromal symptoms such as fever, loss of appetite, malaise, which is a feeling of weakness, myalgia, that means muscle pain, headache, and nausea. 1 to 3 days after the prodrome, the affected mucosa will develop numerous pinhead vesicles, which are raised fluid-filled lesions. Then, these vesicles will break down rapidly to form ulcers. Small ulcers can join to form larger ulcers with scalloped borders and surrounding erythema. Both the keratinized and the non-keratinized mucosa will be affected. The keratinized mucosa includes the hard palate, attached gingiva, and the dorsum of the tongue, while the non-keratinized mucosa includes the buccal and labial mucosa, ventral tongue, and soft palate. In all cases, the gingiva is enlarged, painful, and very erythematous. If you look at the gingiva here, it's really red. The mouth will be extremely painful and this will cause difficulty eating. Mild cases can resolve in 5 to 7 days, but in severe cases, it can last up to 2 weeks. Primary infection in adults may follow a similar pattern. Sometimes in adults, primary infection may cause pharyngotonsillitis, which causes numerous small vesicles to develop on the tonsil and posterior pharynx. Recurrent herpes can occur at either the site of the primary inoculation or in adjacent areas supplied by the same ganglion. The most common secondary herpetic lesion is herpes labialis. This is more commonly known as cold sore or fever blister. You can see herpes labialis in these pictures. Pain, burning, itching, tingling, localized warmth or erythema arise 6 to 24 hours before the lesion develops. Then multiple small papules develop and form clusters of fluid-filled vesicles, like this picture over here. The vesicles then rupture and crust within 2 days. Healing usually occurs within 7 to 10 days. Recurrences can also affect the intraoral mucosa. In the immunocompetent patients, these are the people with the ability to produce normal immune response. Secondary herpes usually occurs on the keratinized mucosa. In this picture is a reactivated lesion on the hard palate. Sometimes after scaling, patients complain of pain in the gingiva along with presentation of vesicles or ulcers. This can be due to reactivation of herpes simplex virus. In the immunocompromised patients, these can be patients under chemotherapy, organ transplant patients, or AIDS patients. Secondary herpes can occur at any site and it's usually widespread. Let's discuss some of the less common presentations of HSV. One is herpetic whitlow, which affects the fingers, usually the index finger or the thumb. This can be an occupational hazard for dentists, especially if gloves are not used regularly. Herpes gladiatorum spreads through contact sports like wrestling and it affects the skin. HSV is believed to be an important etiologic factor in erythema multiforme, which is an immune-mediated disease and a topic to be discussed in a separate video. So what can be the possible differential diagnosis for oral herpes lesions? Primary herpetic gingivous stomatitis may mimic hand-foot-mouth disease, but ulcers will not be as clustered and generalized gingival inflammation will not be present in hand-foot-mouth disease. Secondary herpetic infection may resemble necrotizing ulcerative gingivitis, but in herpes there will be fever and other causes like dental treatment. Whereas in necrotizing ulcerative gingivitis, it will have a punched out interdental papilla with accompanying bleeding and halitosis. Traumatic ulcers on the palate from pizza burns may look like recurrent herpes, so getting a proper history from the patient is important. Aphthous ulcers can look like secondary herpes, but it will be non-keratinized areas and will not have a vesicular phase like secondary herpes. Hope you do remember, secondary herpes usually occurs in keratinized mucosa. To diagnose herpes simplex virus, proper history taking and a thorough clinical examination is the best and most commonly used method. Other methods that can be done include HSV isolation by cell culture, which is the gold standard, but it takes time and is expensive. Biopsy is an option, but this is not necessary or opted most of the time since it's invasive and clinical appearance and history are characteristic to make a diagnosis. Cytologic smear can be done. It's the least invasive and cost-effective option. PCR is an option, but it's also expensive. It's a self-limiting disease, which means it will resolve on its own in a few days, around 2 weeks. The severity can vary according to the patient. Patients should be advised to limit personal contact while the lesion is active. Symptomatic treatment should be administered for fever and pain. Antivirals are effective if given in prodromal stage or during the first 3 symptomatic days. Let's look at the treatment options for primary herpes. Following a soft, bland diet and adequate hydration is important. ice application will also be helpful. For pain management, diclonine hydrochloride spray can be given for children. In the case of adults, diclonine hydrochloride spray or 2% viscous lidocaine, which can be used in swish and spit method, about 5 ml 4 to 5 times daily, or benzidamine can also be given. Systemic analgesics can be considered for pain relief. Antiviral drugs will reduce the pain and speed the healing time, and also development of new lesions will stop. For children, acyclovir 15 mg per kilogram can be given. It should be continued for 7 days to be taken 5 times daily. It can be administered as a rinse and swallow method. It should be given within 72 hours of symptoms, and maximum dose should not exceed 200 mg. In the case of adults, acyclovir 200 mg can be given to be taken 5 times daily for 7 days, or acyclovir 400 mg can be given 3 times daily for 7 to 10 days. Another option is valacyclovir 1 gram 2 times daily for 7 to 10 days, or famciclovir 500 mg can be used to be taken 3 times daily for 7 to 10 days. For recurrent herpes, if it's herpes labialis, if a patient complains of multiple episodes in a year, advise sunscreen. This will help to protect from ultraviolet rays, which can be a trigger. Then topical antivirals such as 5% acyclovir cream to be applied 5 times daily for 4 days can be prescribed, or 1% penciclovir to be applied every 2 hours while awake for 4 days is another option. This has better absorption through the vermilion borders than acyclovir. 10% docosanol can also be prescribed to be applied 5 times daily until the lesion heals for up to 10 days. These topical antivirals should be applied at the first sign of the lesion. Systemic antiviral therapy can be with acyclovir 400 mg taken thrice daily, or 200 mg taken 5 times daily for 5 days. Valacyclovir 2 gram every 12 hours for 1 day can also be used, or famciclovir 1500 mg as a single dose can be used. Valacyclovir and famciclovir has better bioavailability and more convenient oral dosing schedules, so these are preferred compared to acyclovir. Some things to consider if a patient reports with herpes labialis is the duration of the lesion. Antivirals are most effective in the prodromal stage. If duration of the lesion is more than 3 days, it might not be effective, so supportive treatment will be helpful. If the patient is immunocompromised, systemic medication should be given. In immunocompetent patients who are in prodromal stage or the lesion has just begun, medication can be based on their preference to have oral medication or topical treatment. Intraoral herpes does not require treatment as it's not that painful. Chlorhexidine seems to be beneficial alone or in combination with acyclovir suspension. If systemic antivirals are required, 500 to 1000 mg valacyclovir 3 times a day, or 400 to 800 mg acyclovir 5 times a day for 7 to 10 days can be given. Immunocompromised patients should always be treated with systemic medication as their lesions are widespread. So that's all about oral herpes. Don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to the channel. Do press the bell icon for notifications.